Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier, Mike Beer, getting ready for the third leg of the Triple Crown. It's Saturday's DRFBets race of the day, the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes, and of course you can play the race of the day with your DRFBets account. Bet $7 to win on any horse in the Belmont. If your selection finishes second or third, you get your money back. Learn more at promos.drf.com. Let's meet the field of three-year-olds getting set to go 12 furlongs. It's the test of the champion. Matt, the number one is Jovia, 30-1 on the morning line, but a horse that conceivably could be Lone Speed.
I would imagine the instructions are just go right to the front, breaking from the inside. I don't know if this horse has the ability to see out the mile-and-a-half distance, but really with the exception of that Wood Memorial where he almost cleaned out half the field, he really hasn't done anything wrong throughout his career. I think he's a nice horse. To me, this might be a little bit of a tall order as far as class, and distance is concerned.
Yeah, there's something there with this horse. He's got a little bit of talent. I expect him to be on the lead early, and I don't expect him to be around at the finish.
The number two is Everfast, going out for trainer Dale Romans. And Mike, on occasion, this horse runs big races at humongous prices. Second in the Holy Bull at 128-1, and just got a great ride from Joel Rosario last time out in the Preakness, where he was outrun early through a fast pace. Joel stayed inside, he followed War of Will in the lane, and he got up for second.
Yeah, I mean, he did have a lot of things go well for him in the Preakness last time. It was clearly the best race he's ever run, but Rosario felt like he had a lot to do with that. But listen, there's something to be said for actually racing your horses. And Dale Romans races his horses, and he put him in the Preakness, and he came in with a second place finish, and now they're going to try the Belmont with him.
It'd be interesting to see what you get here. To be honest, I don't really know where the Preakness effort came from a numbers standpoint. This is far and away the best race of his career. Happened to be in his 11th lifetime start. And you're right, he did run well earlier on down at Gulfstream, that Holy Bull, but I don't think very highly of that race as a whole. His running style I don't particularly love for this race. He's one if I'm going to use him underneath at most.
Matt, speaking of great rides, the number 3 Master Fencer was ridden beautifully by Julien Leperoux in the Kentucky Derby. This horse didn't break very well, kind of brushed the side of his stall at the start and ended up far back. Julien saved ground, weaved his way through traffic. Looked like this horse was running a little bit at the end. Acts like he wants to go 1.5 miles, but that recent workout, according to Mike Welsh and company, it's a little worrisome.
I think we're at a point now where you just don't want any kind of hiccups leading into a big race like this. It's unlikely that you're going to get some standout superstar workhorse. You just don't want what apparently is going on with Master Fencer with a little bit of inflammation. He's going to run. He's going to be fine. I didn't love him before the workout issue. I don't love him after it. I look at this horse and say, you know what? I think they take him back to the back of the pack. They try to make some sort of a run with him, pick up some pieces. But to me, that's all he did in the Derby, and I expect him to do the same in the Belmont.
Yeah, Matt and I guess look at him the same way. I mean, I'll say that he did earn his way into the Belmont, you could say, because he did put in a run at the end of that Derby, but things did break pretty well for him in that race, I thought, as far as, you know, the ride Leperoux gave him was concerned. It's fine that they give him a chance in this race, but he's pretty hard to like.
Couldn't find any Derby excuses for the number 4 Tax other than the wet track. Maybe he didn't appreciate it. He just simply seemed one-paced all the way around there, Mike. But his previous efforts in the Wood Memorial and the Withers were good. Actually, the latter race in which he broke slowly, rushed up, and then squeezed through a tight spot to win. He came out of his most recent workout with a minor foot problem. They put some glue-on shoes on, and again, it's a hiccup.
Yeah, you don't like that kind of stuff. His Withers was a good effort. I thought he got a great trip in that race, and, you know, personally, I don't love the Withers as a race, but he got it done. I wanted to see him maybe jump forward off of that race. I don't think he's jumped forward off of that race. His Wood was fine. It didn't do a lot for me. His Derby, if you want to give him the sloppy track excuse, fine. He got a great trip in that race and didn't run. And, you know, as recently as maybe a week ago, Gargan was, you know, waffling about whether he was going to even run this horse, and now he is running him. I don't know. I have way too many questions about him.
Yeah, there are a lot of mixed signals regarding this horse and his running on Saturday. But for me, when I look at him, I don't look at him really as a win contender. But if you're looking for a horse that has the running style that to me is conducive to success in the Belmont, I think he is that sort of grinder that can be forwardly placed. Distance, who knows? I mean, look, it's an unknown for all these horses. But I just feel like if you're going to use anything as far as deep exotics are concerned, maybe you could use him underneath.
Matt, the number 5 Bourbon War was sort of a wise guy horse going into the Preakness. And why not? He faced some of the best 3-year-olds in the division in South Florida all winter long, and he acquitted himself quite nicely, running second behind Code of Honor in the Fountain of Youth. And you can argue that ground loss might have been the difference in that 3/4 of a length defeat to Code of Honor. He was one of several horses compromised by a lack of pace in the Florida Derby. Mark Henning put blinkers on in the Preakness, and this horse just never looked comfortable.
No, he just never really picked his feet up, never put in any sort of bid. He had the pace, had all the sort of circumstances that you would want for a horse like this. He just never really seemed all that comfortable. I think it's a combination of things. That was off of a few-month layoff. I think he's going to move forward here on Saturday afternoon. I like that the blinkers come back off. I look at this horse. I still think there's ability here. I'm not ready to give up on him. If it's not Saturday, maybe he turns into a Saratoga type that can move forward. I picked him third.
Yeah, he's one of the horses that I want to keep an eye on maybe for, the second half of the year. I don't love him in the Belmont. I put him fourth in my picks just because he just feels like a horse who will run better than he did last time. I don't know if he's going to improve enough to really get a big piece of this, but he's a horse that I think you want to at least keep an eye on.
Mike, the number 6 Spinoff goes out for trainer Todd Pletcher, and he was hustled out of there hard in the Derby, and he ended up very wide on the backstretch between 4 and 7 paths out, and he kind of gave it up with 3.5 furlongs to go. I don't think he really appreciated the wet track. You could also argue it was a bit of a case of too much too soon for a horse in only his 5th lifetime start. He really looked good destroying those weaker optional claiming horses at Tampa Bay. His Louisiana Derby was good. I think it can be closer to the pace here.
His first 2 starts as a 3-year-old suggest that he does have some talent. I wouldn't go too hard on him for the Derby. He didn't take any money in that race. He didn't run well, obviously. But getting back to faster could help this horse. There's something there with him, guys. He's not really bred, I don't think, to get the 1.5 miles. And I sort of agree with you, Dan. I feel like maybe this is a horse you want to wait on a little bit.
I expect him to be forwardly placed, but you guys have kind of already touched on it. I'm getting increasingly concerned about distance, and ultimately, when it's all said and done, I'm starting to wonder if he's going to be a horse that actually does his best running at shorter distances as opposed to longer.
I want to throw up the Timeform U.S. pace projector for this year's Belmont Stakes. We mentioned Jovia as the potential likely pace setter. Timeform U.S. agrees. Near the back of the pack is the number 7, Sir Winston. And the trivia question for the folks at home is, who has the best last race buyer coming into the Belmont? Is it War of Will? No. Is it Tacitus? No. It's Sir Winston with his 2nd place effort in the local prep for the Belmont, the Grade 3 Peter Pan Stakes. And Matt, I thought he had a pretty decent setup in that race. He was sitting by himself at the back. He picked up some pieces, was rolling on late to finish 2nd. This is the kind of horse that has a distance pedigree. He acts like he wants to run all day. I'm a little worried that he's the kind of plodding type that needs a little pace and race luck, but he's on the improve.
His running style is the thing that turned me off. It's not so much that I don't think there's ability here. It's just, boy, I feel like he's going to be coming from way out of it. And unless the pace completely collapses, which I suppose is possible, I think he's just going to be very, very up against it. And maybe an underneath award is sort of his ceiling. Another thing to keep in mind, his dam did better on a different surface. You take a look and see what his career record is so far. He's 2 for 3 on Synth. He's 0 for 5 on the main track. I wonder if this doesn't work, maybe you get a surface change at some point.
It'll be interesting to see what he does. I mean, in a race that, as far as I'm concerned anyway, lacks an interesting long shot. Maybe he is the interesting long shot because he did run well last time. I don't love his running style. I want to see him back up the Peter Pan, though. I want to see him run another race like that one because as well as he was finishing in that race, the race set up pretty well for him. It's not like he ever looked like he was going to win or even make it close in that race, but I guess he did run pretty well last time.
Perhaps the one to take out of the Peter Pan, Mike, was the beaten favorite, the number 8, Intrepid Heart, who stumbled pretty badly coming out of the gate and then was on the chase, and he finished evenly. This horse is adding blinkers, and as you see from the pace projector, he can be close to the pace, and if you don't think that Jovia is classy enough or has the stamina enough to get the distance, there's a good scenario that Intrepid Heart might be able to make the lead. And when you consider his pedigree, a half-brother to Commissioner, who was 2nd in this race by a head a few years ago, by Tappet, who has sired Derby winners Creator, Taprit, and Tonalist, and had Frosted run 2nd in American Pharaoh's Triple Crown season. There are a lot of things to like about this lightly raced horse. I don't think we've seen his best.
Yeah, we definitely haven't seen his best, and the intangibles are there as far as pedigree and all that stuff goes. He can get a good trip in this race. Boy, you'd really want more seasoning than this coming into the Belmont Stakes. He's going to go 1.5 miles off of only 3 starts, and it's not like his most recent one is his best one. There's something there with this horse. I wish he had a little bit more underneath him before he tries the 1.5 miles. He's a horse I'm going to use somewhere, but not on top.
Coming out of the Peter Pan, he's the one I was most interested in. I don't love him on Saturday, but I think the running style fits. You brought up the pedigree, Dan. He has it in spades, and obviously the connections of Velasquez and Todd Pletcher.
Matt, you kept the faith with War of Will in the Preakness. You basically said before the Derby that he was your Preakness horse. He paid $14, and it was nice to see that justice was served from a trip standpoint, because we all know all the problems this horse had in the Kentucky Derby, and Tyler Gaffalione stuck with the plan. He wasn't bothered by what happened in the Derby. He sat the same trip as the Derby in the Preakness. The rail opened up, and War of Will did the rest. He's looking for another great trip tracking outside here.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me. I'm not going to argue with anyone that looks at that Preakness and said this was the absolute ideal sort of trip for him. Saved ground the entire way, scooted up the rail, went on and got the job done. I do wonder if that Preakness is a little bit underrated, because he was relatively close to a hot pace that day. And you take a look and see the other horses that were in and amongst him, they were coming from way out of it. And the fact that he was still finishing, I thought that was a good sign. And Dan, you touched on it. I think he might work out an ideal sort of trip in here. I think he sits just off Jovia. If Intrepid Heart wants to go, or Spinoff is forwardly placed, I don't think it'll matter. If War of Will is good enough, I think he's going to have every opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. I mean, I can't say that I love him in this race, but I don't see how you can go through this Belmont field from 1 to 10 and feel like this horse doesn't have a huge chance to win 2/3 of this Triple Crown. He's run really well in his recent races, and he's going to get a good trip in this race.
Formulator fact for the number 10, Tacitus, your slight morning line favorite at 9-5 going out for Bill Mott. Past 4 years, 3-year-olds only in dirt route graded stakes races, off a slight layoff like this one from the Derby to the Belmont. Mott 31% winners with a $3.19 return on investment. Mike, they've thrown a lot at this horse in a short amount of time. He's only raced 5 times, but he is battle tested to be sure. Tampa Bay Derby had to go through in between horses to win. Wood Memorial basically knocked sideways at the start, shrugged it off and went on to win. And in the Derby, I just don't think he appreciated that kickback in the early portion of the race and ended up too far back.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. I mean, he did feel like one of the horses in the Derby who maybe things just didn't go perfectly for. Not only did he resent the kickback, he took a lot of dirt. It felt like Ortiz had a little bit of trouble getting him clear around the second turn. He was running on at the end. I think he's going to do better in this race. He won those 2 Derby prep races, so you know that he stacks up well in this race. And at the end of the day, he didn't come up that strong. I think he's going to be very tough to beat in this race.
Yeah, from a quality standpoint, he's right there. If it's not War of Will, it feels like it's Tacitus. The interesting thing for me is going to be to see where Jose Ortiz positions this horse. I would imagine you tuck in just behind War of Will. When he goes, you make your move and you just assume or you hope that you're better than him on any given day. I'm not going to argue with anyone that puts him on top.
Pick time for this year's Belmont Stakes for the Saturday DRFBets race of the day. Matt, you're sticking with War of Will. Again, he's got all the intangibles. He's a really good-looking, well-bred horse that's going to have the tactical speed enough to get the jump on his main competition.
Yeah, and that was really kind of the tipping point for me. There's also a part of me that feels like, I said it when we talked about the post draw, maybe the pendulum has swung a little bit too far the other way to Tacitus's favor as opposed to War of Will. This race, for some reason, it just feels like the Belmont from a few years ago with Taproot and Irish War Cry. I feel like they're the 2 horses that lay over this field. I expect them to go 1-2.
Mike, you're going Tacitus in here, ran really well towards the end of the Kentucky Derby. Again, battle tested. You got the great Bill Mott in your corner, and he's got that classy Juddmonte pedigree.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty to like about this horse. He's the morning line favorite. He's a pretty obvious pick. It's just one of those Belmonts where I kind of agree with Matt. I didn't see the interesting alternative to the favorites necessarily in here. Intrepid Heart interests me a little bit, but I'm going with Tacitus.
After the Preakness and Peter Pan were completed, I wanted Global Campaign in the Belmont Stakes. He looked good winning the Peter Pan. He earned a fast race, and I was looking forward to seeing him perhaps as the 3rd choice in the Belmont. Global Campaign is not here. He had a minor injury, so I'll go with the other 2 horses coming out of the Peter Pan, and I'll take the better priced option as my top selection. Sir Winston, I think, is built to go the distance. He is going to need some help up front, but it was nice to see he earned that fast race over this Belmont track. I'm going 7, 8, 10, and 3. Mike, give me numbers.
I went 10, 8, 9.
Matt, give me numbers.
9, 10, 5, 4.
It's the 3rd jewel in racing's Triple Crown. It's the Belmont Stakes. It's the Saturday DRFBets race of the day. Get your money back offer when you play with DRFBets. Bet $7 to win on any horse in the Belmont. If your selection runs 2nd or 3rd, you get your money back. Learn all the details at promos.drf.com and approximate post time for the Test of the Champion, 6:37 Eastern. Good luck.